theories. So introduction. So the understanding concepts, and we have there in our this new lecture, moral thinker, philosophy, and ethical. So the introduction to ethical principles. So understanding concept, uh, the moral thinkers and philosophy, real life application, modern society concept, and administrative application. Importation of principles, memorization required, and these are the some essential thing. Relevance in moral concept. So teaching of Buddha, sage of saint and reformers, Plato's theory of justice and application. So virtue ethics, the Sadachar, core idea is moral act by a virtuous person and character over action. Example, so Krishna action in Mahabharata, Rama killing of Vali, and hero of in movies doing violence. Types of virtue. So moral virtue. So moral virtue is the kindness, benevolence, the paropkar, compassion, karuna, honesty, conscientiousness, kartvanishta, and gratitude, kartagyata. And non-moral virtues like patience, calmness, perseverance, the dhiraj, and firmness, the dridhata, and context dependence. Then comes the passion versus reason. So, core conflict of passion versus the reason. So, ethical decision making and balance is required. And component. So, passion, junoon, bhavaniya, bhavna, and ichha. And reason, tark, logic, and vivek. Analogy. So, dam, bandh, water, passion, and emotions gets reason and directing water. Emotional intelligence, the balance of emotional and intellect, essential of civil servant. Qualities of passion. So, compassion, karuna, empathy, sahanubhuti, sympathy, samanubhuti, forgiveness, shama, and kindness, dayaluta. Qualities from research: equity, samta, rule of law, fortitude, dhairya, prudence, vivek, discipline, anushashan, scientific approach, and restraint, satyam, sanyam. Then the example, so Armstrong Pam, IS, built 100 km road in Manipur, used passion, crowdfunding, and required sympathy and empathy. Then comes the moral thinker. So Sukrat. So timeline around 450 BC. Context Greek. Then the war, democracy versus oligarchy. Anti-democratic view supported Sparta. So knowledge is the virtue and ignorance is vice. I know one thing that I know nothing. Knowledge is unity of virtue. Application in administration. A National Education Policy 2020 for holistic education. Knowledge of conduct rule, all India service and state, and understanding society and economy. Concept of good life. So self-control, arth nirgraha, detachment, vairagya sahaj, and non-abstinence but non-distraction, and higher goals, welfare, moksha, and nirvana, and use of government machinery without forgetting the purpose. Then comes the concept of citizenship. So power of independent reasoning, arguing and judgment, and Article 19 and Consumer Protection Act. Then comes the criticism of the Sukrat. So knowledge alone is not sufficient. Corruption despite of ethical training, and ignorance of role of passion and emotion. Then comes the Plato. So Plato, student of Socrates, give theory of soul, the Atman, He is focused on rational, spiritual, bhatnatak, and appetitive, the abhilashi. The cardinal virtue, give forth cardinal virtue, wisdom, the vivek, virtue is reason, virtue of reason, courage, virtue of spirit, temperance, sayam, control the appetite, and justice, harmony of the three. Application of virtues, wisdom, policy making and understanding, courage, decision making and instinct, temperance, respect, honesty, anti corruption, justice, impartially, emotional intelligence. Theory of good, अच्छाई का सिद्धांत, virtue life, good life, intellectual study, rational action, pure aesthetic pleasure, सौंदर्य सुख, formula, reason plus truth plus spiritual intelligence plus aesthetic pleasure. Then come the virtue is the teachable. So moral learn through education, not innate. Example, skill development and moral education. Then the criticism. So limited number of virtue, more than four. Ideal state, utopia, impractical. Against democracy, oligarchy. Censorship against freedom of expression. Then comes the Aristotle, the Arastu. So, student of Plato and teacher of Alexander, principle of Sanam Bonum, highest good. So, happiness, Sukh is the end. The intellectual pleasure, comprehension, acceptance of common happiness source, friendship, family, and comfort. Application in administration, happiness. Then comes the service delivery, welfare attitude, going beyond call of duty, self sacrifice, consign and good sleep, and officer adopting orphan in COVID. Then comes the importance of self control. So, knowledge alone is insufficient, need discipline. Virtuous person can face unhappy circumstances. Example, Khemka, Ramayana, Mahabharata, and fitness of delivering justice, and example of corrupt officer despite knowledge. Theory of injustice, of justice, distributive justice, distribution of resource and opportunity, corrective justice, redressing wrong and punishment. Example, paper leak law and POSCO Act. Golden means, so virtue as a intermediate between the extremes and required self-control. Example, so courage between cowardice and foolishness, and humanity between servility and rudeness, ambition between greed and lack or aspiration, generosity between stinginess and extravagance, political neutrality between bias and indifference, apathy between indifference and nervous breakdown. Then the context dependent. So importance of the end, so as important as a mean, balance between individual and state importance. State exists for the good of citizen, not vice versa. So no harassment of citizen, freedom of will. So Arastu the criticized Socrates for ignoring the will, and knowledge doesn't guarantee right action. Example, Article 1925 8 not absolute. Administration must ensure one's others' right not violated. Then Ryodrik, so the logos, logic, reason, and fact. Pathos, the emotion and feeling, and ethos, the credibility and character. These are the Aristotle. Then comes the ethical theories. So, teleological theory, concentrarianism. So, focus on outcome and consequence. Type, the ethical egoism, self-interest, altruism, others' interest, and utilitarianism means greater good for greatest number. Then comes the utilitarianism, means hedonic, three type of utilitarianism: hedonistic utilitarianism, act utilitarianism, and rule utilitarianism. Hedonistic utilitarianism, the pleasure of ultimate goal, quantitative by Jeremy Bentham and qualitative by Just Mill. So, quantitative, greatest happiness principle, seven dimensions of pleasure, insanity, duration, application, PDS, SBM, and Ujala, criticism, immoral act for greater good are also there. Qualitative, chess meal, intelligent pleasure higher than sensual, higher versus lower potential, and application. education, art, and social welfare. Then comes the act utilization, focus on individual act consequence, and traditional notion right can be violated. Then rule ultimatism, so focus on rule maximization utility. You would consider justice and individual right link between constitution and deontology. Then comes the deontology, duty based ethics. So, action itself determines the morality, not outcome or the actor. And duty is primary. And example, Balika Vad and when TN session. Proponents. So, the Emmanuel Kant and V.D. Ross, prima facie duty, John Rawls, fairness, and Karma Yoga, Gita, and Purva Mimamsa of Vedic principle. Then comes the Immanuel Kant. So Kant give the Kant was the father of deontology. He gave the theory of categorical imperative. So the categorical imperative have the universality, humanity as end, not mean, and autonomy. So universality have the act only according to maxim that should become universal law. Test of universalism and personal sentiment irrelevant. An example, don't steal, don't kill, in and humanity as end, not means. So treat humanity as ultimate goal, support human right ideal. Example, NHRC Article 17, UN Charter, and welfare schemes. Then the autonomy. So the categorical imperative and the Kant moral rules from free and rational will, and no coercion, theory of entitlement by admission, and accountability require free will, and suicide a moral wrong violated of humanity as end. Then comes the duty for the duty sake by the Kant, intrinsic motivation, and regardless of praise and punishment. Example, Ashok Khemka. Then comes the John Rawls. So John Rawls theory of justice, social justice, two principles of justice. So equal basic liberties and social and economic inequalities. So equal basic of justice. So political liberty, freedom of speech. Example 14, 15, 19, 21 and 25 to 28. And social and economic inequalities acceptable if the benefit or the least advantage difference principle, attachment of position upon the all, fair equity of opportunity, and reservation for ST, SC, and disabled. Then comes the veil of ignorance by this uh, John Rawls, veil of ignorance. So decision maker unaware of their social standing, unsure impartiality. Example, DM Gopalganj widow mill. Then comes the evolutionary ethics. So, a several oil of text, moral principle, morality evolve with human and social development. And example, capitalism versus communism, and trend toward absolute morality, individuals and social interesting align. And administrative person, growth in social interest, and ethics adapt the changing time, environmental, bio, and digital ethics, and future ethics will be stronger, repealing obstacle law and impact of evolutionary past and being ahead of time may not be accepted. Example, Gandhi and Muhammad bin Tughlaq. Then comes the other thinker. So, the G. Murray, W. D. Ross, and John Paul Starr, and naturalistic fallacy by G. E. Murray. So, cannot define good in naturalistic term. Is does not imply the oath. Criticism of defining morality based on nature. And example, thief morality misinterpreted. Then comes the uh, previous year questions. So, the Plato theory of justice and rules utilitarianism and categorical imperative by Kant and Kant morality and practice question. So, Aristotle golden mean define example, Kant categorical imperative example and application, and the Socrates philosophy of relevance theory explain example. So thank you very much. Thank you.